Okay, we have established a quorum. We are good to go. In our packet, we had the minutes for our last meeting, March 28th, 2022. Any corrections, changes that need to be noted? Okay. How am I going to know if Commissioner Poulin raises her hand? Will I see it somewhere?
Should either have to have the video on or use the hand raise function. Oh, she raised her hand.
There we go. How's that? Can you see me?
Yes. Yes. That way I know when you raise your hand, it'll pop up, and you can mute whenever you want. Very good. Okay, so
And it looks like we have one more commissioner joining.
all right. Welcome, Stephen.
Looks like we're gonna have an audio issue here.
Can you hear us, Stephen?
Yes,
All right. And you are here for roll call, right?
yes.
Okay. We were just going over the minutes. So far, there hasn't been any changes suggested. Did you have anything since you popped in a little late?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. With no further things, we will consider them approved. And this is the time during all of our meetings when we give the citizenry an opportunity to speak to the Planning Commission on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. So if anybody, I'm looking over our video attendees and they all have a role in tonight's meeting. I don't see any public, and our one in the chambers is a councilman. So if there's any raised hands that you can see, Kelly, let me know, or any other way.
No, you don't have any public attendees.
All right. Okay, we will go to the director's meeting, report. Excuse me.
Yeah, I didn't really have time to put together much of a report for this meeting, and I had put a pretty comprehensive one together last meeting. So I just put the future meeting dates on here and the items that we would likely be seeing at that point. And then for my report tonight, I was going to turn it to Shelley and let her kind of walk through some of the outreach we've been doing on the comprehensive plan.
Very good.
Yeah, so I have two main updates. One is during the month of May, we're going to be conducting a number of community conversations with different stakeholder groups around Sandy. I'm happy to provide a complete list of everybody we're going to be meeting with, but I'm pretty excited about it. It's what gets me excited about planning is collaborating and coordinating with residents to find out what the community's values are. So I'm really excited about that. And then the second piece is I just want to put in a plug for that video that we're putting together. I sent out, if you didn't get a chance to check your email today, I sent out kind of just a short clip of Commissioner McLean-Wenzel and Councilor Sheldon, kind of their answers that they gave to some of those questions to give you an idea of, kind of what I'm looking for. But videos are a great way to do a community outreach because it allows you to kind of set a tone, set a feeling in a way that written communication can't necessarily do. So if you're interested, it takes 20 to 30 minutes. I think Commissioner McLean-Wenzel and I were done in 10. Very casual, very informal. I hope I'm not intimidating, but yeah, let me know. We can get something scheduled.
Well, for the record, Hollis, you had a lot more airtime than Councilman over there. Because I watched it.
No, what happened was I was editing that video and my computer was about to die.
Oh,
So I had to just like call it done.
I was trying to give her a plug.
Now, how are they used?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing kind of a 4 to 5 minute main video that we're going to be pushing on our social media channels, going to be, putting on all the different Facebook community groups. That's going to be an overview of what the comprehensive plan is, what it covers, and why it's important for residents to get involved. And then we're also going to be doing kind of short 30-second videos that we'll be pushing on social media over the duration of the project.
Okay, so they are to promote community involvement.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know some of those videos, at least one I remember that I thought was excellent that you shared with us, and keep sending those to us.
Yeah.
At least to me, I'll speak for myself. Was a city where, if I'm remembering correctly, the comprehensive plan had been approved, and it was more of a, here's what it is and here's why we have
Yeah.
it. So I was thinking that these might be used.
Yeah, this one's gonna be a
after.
little higher production quality, a little more intentionally edited. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good.
And then just so you know, the May 23rd, the second item there that you see on the agenda tonight, the comprehensive plan conversation, that is one of the community conversations, and it's going to be the one with the planning commission. It's not going to be your only opportunity to get feedback or comments, but it's just one avenue to get feedback from the planning commission during this process,
Okay.
kind of early on in the process.
So that'll be a directed conversation by the contract company.
It will be Shelley and Annie's with our consulting firm
Okay.
3J. It'll be the two of them kind of leading that.
I saw that. I thought we just sit here and say, okay, let's talk about the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it's
good.
going to be a little bit more directed
Good,
than that,
excellent.
but yeah, typically they do one with the planning commission early in the process to kind of get feedback and input. And then obviously there'll be a lot more interaction with the planning commission over the course of the project, but it's just kind of like one opportunity to get additional feedback and information from you.
Any discussion, questions for staff? We can go into our discussion time. Questions among ourselves?
I just have, just for clarification, Kelly, you said that for the May 23rd meeting, when we go over the comprehensive plan, that will not be the only time, because I won't be present during that meeting. I'll have another opportunity to be involved in it. Or talk, ask questions.
Yeah, you may or may not, depending if you're at one of the other public opportunities will be where we will be doing outreach. You may or may not have an opportunity to comment through the community conversation aspect, but yeah, you will have other opportunities to inform the process and the outcomes.
Yeah, I think about public engagement in this project is like it's a toolbox, right? So community conversations are one tool. We'll also have open houses. We're going to be doing engagement at Longest Day and Mountain Festival, some things at the library, right? There's going to be lots of opportunities for different levels of involvement.
And there's also currently a survey that you can take on Sandy Speaks. I don't know if you've taken that or yet. Not yet.
So just to clarify though, that is the meeting for us as planning commissioners, so we'll miss that.
Right.
Yeah, it's
That's what
kind
I
of like.
that's what I heard too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it probably considered like your formal opportunity to
Mhm.
give input as a recognized commissioner. There's other ones. You could go to any of the community things.
Yeah.
If you
and-
also remember back, gosh, was it a year and a half ago? When I had those one-on-one meetings with planning commissioners and city councilors, all of that information is with the consultant as well. So all of the feedback that you gave during those meetings is part of our kind of public engagement process as well.
Chair, are we able to submit written testimony in our absence for the 23rd?
I assume, is that,
I don't see why.
would
you
that be a
couldn't do
public hearing format?
No, it won't be a public hearing.
It's really informal. It's kind of a series of open-ended questions, but we can
Mhm.
definitely send you the questions.
I just don't, I don't want
Sure.
to, I want to be a part of it, but
Yeah.
I just can't be here that day.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
want to
me
miss it.
too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll send you to the questions and you can provide whatever written feedback you like.
Thank
That'd be great.
Yeah, and depending how that conversation goes on May 23rd, there might be an opportunity to possibly, I would have to talk to the consultant about this, but there might be an opportunity to do like a second one or a follow-up to that in the summer sometime. We're just on a pretty, I mean, I'll just be honest, we're on a pretty tight timeline with the comprehensive plan. We're trying to do it in about 18 months to 2 years. Most cities do it in about 3 years. So but there are some ambitious project deadlines. So
Well, I've liked what I've seen so far.
yeah, it's moving. I mean, for a comprehensive plan, it's moving pretty quick already. Shelley and I have been reviewing a lot of background reports already. So we just had the kickoff like a month ago. So.
All right then. Well, we can go on with some old business that we've got to pick up, which is I gotta find it here, the Parks and Trails Master Plan Amendment. Is that no, that's the second one. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So we will open at 6:44. This is file number 21-032. The design DCA chapters 1732 and 1786. Call for any abstentions from any of the commissioners. Nothing seen, any conflict of interest? Anybody needs that? Okay, and we'll move right to the staff report. This being a legislative, we have less hoops to jump through in our order.
Yeah, so as you know, we updated the Parks and Trails Master Plan last year. I believe it was adopted in October and November, which Shelley's going to go into more detail on the second item for you tonight. And with that came some updates to the code that we were looking at. I think as the staff report points out, we brought it to Planning Commission in August and September of last year. Based on those discussions and then further discussions with the Parks and Trails Advisory Board and with Environmental Science Associates, ESA, which was the consultant that put together the Parks and Trails Master Plan that was adopted. And then also with our attorneys, and then also with Councilor Walker, who was very involved in the Parks and Trails Advisory Board for 20 plus years. We took all of that information and we basically figured out by about last December, a few months after we met with the Planning Commission, that there was additional work that needed to be done on the code edits. So over the last 3 or 4 months, I've been working pretty closely with Councilor Walker, who is very involved in all that over the last 20 years, with the Parks and Trails Advisory Board Chair, Don Robertson, with ESA and with our attorney's office. And we've come up with a lot of additional code edits that were not presented to you last August and September. And the staff report, I'm not going to walk through every one of these, but the key considerations and analysis, which is like the bottom of page 1 and the top half of the second page, that summarizes the main edits that occurred to chapter 1732 and 1786. There was a lot of housekeeping, as you probably remember, when we looked at this code 6-7 months ago. There was also some changes to the permitted use to give additional clarity. There was additional information to make it more clear and objective than it already is, to incorporate code references where we've had complaints from developers that they didn't feel they were adequately incorporated. So we said, okay, we'll even do more work to try to incorporate those adequately into the code. We also removed some diagrams and changed some of the standards around when parks are developed, how many linear feet of streets need to be developed around those parks, how the houses need a front on the parks. And so there's a lot of code edits in section 1786-20 that are kind of further edits to what you reviewed last fall. We also modified the dedication factor. So prior, it was a lower, I think it was 0.0043 parkland per person when they develop a subdivision or an apartment complex. That's the multiplier factor that we use in the calculation. We have modified that, and that is now at 0.0068. So what that means is when say a single family home subdivision is proposed, there's a calculation factor. And so the calculation is about 0.0025 higher than it currently is in the code, which is a considerable increase. But what that will do is in effect, help us get more parkland per the parks master plan. And then when we decide that we want the fee in lieu, it will give us a higher basically calculation to then calculate the cost that's set in our fee schedule. So basically what it will do is it'll give more revenue for future parkland purchases. And so if you remember, there's two parts of our SDC currently. There's the SDC component, which is called an SDC in our code, and that is for the improvements within a park. So if you're doing grading or you're putting in trees or sidewalks or playground equipment, that's paid with the SDC. What I'm talking about here with the ratio of parkland per person is the second component, which is the land component. And that's for, we either have developers dedicate land when they do like a subdivision or an apartment complex, or we do what's called a fee in lieu of land. And so basically that's money that they give to the city so that we can go out and purchase land in the future. So that's what this is primarily affecting, is the second component, the land piece. Most cities group them both together into one and just call it an SDC. But in Sandy, we're a little bit unique in that we have an SDC for the improvement and a fee in lieu for the land. I think we're the only ones in the state that do it that way, that I'm aware of. So that there's a little bit of clarity and refinement that we've done to the code edits with that. And then this is not really a planning commission thing, but in the near future, there's going to be some considerations brought before the city council for increases to the SDC and increases to the parks fee in lieu to try to pay for some of those park improvements in the master plan. And that'll be a separate thing, and that's a policy decision for the council. But I just want to let you know that that's also going on in the background right now, that we're working with a consultant group to put together a proposal for that for the council. So with these code edits, this is just one step in a multitude of steps to kind of change our approach on how to collect fees, how much we're going to collect, to kind of try to have some sureties that when the city wants parkland, we can get that from development. And with that, I was going to actually turn it over to two other people. So that kind of is just my summary of what is happening here. I would love to hear any questions that you may have as it relates to any of the big changes or small changes. I was going to turn it over to Rochelle. She is the Parks and Recreation Director and has been, I believe, with Sandy since October now. And she was just going to introduce herself and have a few remarks. And then after that, after she speaks, I was going to turn it to our city attorney to elaborate on anything that I said, or if I misstepped on anything, he can correct me.
Well, good evening, Planning Commission. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. I was hoping to be available and meet everybody, but thank you for this opportunity. And it's been great working with Kelly so far on these two topics, and I look forward to listening in and seeing how this goes, but nice to virtually meet everyone. So hope to see you around.
Thank you for joining us.
And then before I turn it to Spencer, I did want to, I forgot, I don't know why I forgot to mention this. I think it's in the recommendation section, but the Parks and Trails Advisory Board did meet on April 13th and recommended approval of the code edits. So I did want to let you know that they've had another chance to review as well. And then Spencer, do you want to speak to anything in addition to what I covered?
I'll just add one thing. I think Kelly did a really nice job. Some of the, since this isn't your first look at this, some of these changes might be new. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that we were, at least when I was working with Kelly specifically on this, we were tasked with looking at it through the lens of clear and objective considerations. And so you'll see some changes that were made in here that that appear and quite frankly do kind of restrict or pull back some of the city's discretionary authority in some of these considerations, and the criteria are more kind of automatic in their application. And that there's two things about that I want to mention. One is in the most general terms, cities always like to preserve discretion, to preserve flexibility, to be able to work with a particular site and make the most sense for the best benefit of the city. But the clear and objective statutes that were adopted by the legislature a few sessions ago have essentially said that they don't want cities to do that in applications for needed housing as defined by state law. And so you need to have at least one path to go down where the criteria can be identified by an applicant and they can know whether or not they can satisfy them straight up, straight down, thumbs up, thumbs down, no question, no discretion. And so some of the linguistic changes you'll see are in that vein. I think that's the only other thing I'd really want to add besides what you pointed out, Kelly.
Thank you. So I know it's a lot of code edits, especially in 1786. It's pretty, I think probably at least half of the text has been either modified, erased, or added to. So I know it's a lot to chew on, and I know it's a lot of, as Spencer pointed out, a lot of clarity edits that I know you as a commission are relying on myself and the city attorney to make sure they're done correctly. You know, I will say that the case law and everything at the state legislature is kind of always changing. So that I just want to kind of stress that this is our best attempt, but you know, it doesn't mean that we won't have a developer that comes in and still challenges us on different code edits or different court cases that have happened even after we adopt this. You know, a month later, there might be a court case that has changed something in this document. So
yeah, that's a really good point too, Kelly. And what I want to follow up by saying that is it also means in all likelihood, you can anticipate it may not be this comprehensive, but you may see future amendments that come before you for recommendation if we discover something through the course of processing applications that needs a little refinement. So just know that going into this as well.
I wrap up your.
yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of staff right now before we see if there's any hidden public testimony out there lurking on their phone or something? Okay, we will move to public testimony and we give opportunity for just the general public to speak to this issue. And being that it doesn't look like there's anybody here, we will just open it up to any sort of testimony, whether you are in favor of it or you are against the proposal, or if you just are neutral, you have some comments, some questions. And if you are on Zoom, then what you do to speak is to hit the raised hand button, and that will notify Kelly, and then he will recognize you. If you're on the telephone, it is *9. That will effectively raise your hand and then wait to be recognized by Kelly. So is there any public with us that we aren't seeing to give testimony tonight? Raise your hand.
Yeah, you still have you don't have anybody as an attendee.
Okay. We have to go through the routine.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, I don't think you need to do much of a staff recap. And we can just go into our discussion. Just make sure that somebody reminds us to close the public hearing. Unless you want to do it, we can go ahead and close the public hearing because we're not going to be, we don't have anybody to discuss.
No more
with.
testimony, right?
Yeah, there's nobody else to ask questions to. So somebody can.
You want a motion?
Yeah,
Chair, I move we close the meeting on 1732 and 1786.
I second that.
been moved and seconded to close the public hearing at 6:58 PM. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Motion passed. All right. Questions, observations? My hat's off to whoever works with Microsoft Word editing routines. I tell you.
Chair, I have a question. And I'd like to say this is a great job. It was easy to understand. I printed mine off at home so I could read through it more continuously, but this is just more for my own. I couldn't find it in the master plan. On page 2 of 1786, number 2, it talks about this standard represents the citywide land to population ratio for city parks at 5.25 acres of land per 1,000 population. And for land for trails at 1.55 per 1,000, that becomes the 6.8, which is the 0.0068. Where is that in the master plan? And I admittedly did not read every line in the master plan. Could you just point me to where that's at? Because I couldn't find population in the master plan.
Yeah,
I just wanted to connect the dots.
I'm not sure if the point or the 6.8 acres of land is in the master plan. I think it is. Let me see if I can find it here. I remember coming across it. Oops. Just close all my windows. Bear with me for a second. Can't believe I did that.
Because I did read every line of the amended changes, and the one thing I was just looking for was how to connect back to justifying that change in that value. I mean, everything led me back to the master plan, but I just couldn't find it. But I
Yeah,
haven't read it. It's a big document. So
Yeah, the 6.8 actually came from ESA, our consultant. Tracy Johnson, who's actually changed jobs, but she's the one that gave me that number back in February. And then with the refinements of 5.25 and 1.155 or 155.
Is the footnote 2, which references in the master plan, table 10? Is that, I saw.
well, you know where that is.
Yeah, it might be,
I didn't even-
I think it's in the level of service analysis.
Mhm,
That's where I'm
yeah.
looking. Is that where you were looking
Yeah, it starts
to?
on page 29 of the master plan.
Where did you say?
It's page 29 of the master plan. It's 44 in the PDF, I believe.
That's what I'm asking, what's the PDF?
And then if you go down to pretty confident there's a table in here.
All right. There we go.
Yeah, so it's I believe it's table 10.
Yeah, that's what's in the footnote.
Yeah, and it says so it's just very small.
Footnote 7 on table 10,
Yeah, there you go.
6.75 acres per 1,000 homes.
Which is page 48.
Yeah,
Right.
page 48 of the PDF, page 33 within the document.
On
If
the
you're looking
document,
at
yeah.
You find that, Chris?
Yeah, I see it. That's that very fine print. I got it now. So that number is slightly off, right? It's that says 6.75, which I guess that will round to 6.8. Okay, we're there then.
Yeah, they ran
Yep, they rounded it up.
they rounded it. Yeah.
Yep, to 6.8. I get it. That makes sense. Perfect. I just wanted to put that in my notes in case I'm ever asked in the future. You can go back and 10 sub 7.
Yeah, and one thing to know in the code edits is anywhere that, thank you, Jerry, for reminding me of that. Anywhere where we were trying to reference back to the Parks and Trails master plan, we did our best to try to also reference a table. And that's Spencer could elaborate a lot more on this, but that's kind of what recent court decisions have said, is that if you're trying to point to a specific thing within that master plan, to even go further than that and reference a table or a map or. I don't know.
Right, yeah, so the few clear and objective LUBA decisions that we have at our disposal to kind of give us some direction, the successful challenges have been to challenges of cities trying to apply standards from a comprehensive plan that are just incorporated into the code by reference. And the whole idea under the clear and objective standards is that the criteria are supposed to be readily accessible to an applicant. And in a few instances, one LUBA decision I was involved with, they said a mere reference in the code to the master plan that requires an applicant to do a two-step process to figure out exactly what it is may be too much. And so we went through the exercise of flagging those in these edits, and where we could, instead, where there was language that formally said, you know, this shall be required pursuant to the standards included in the master plan, we said, you know, table 10 or line 5 or section blank, just so that we could take it one step further than what LUBA said may not be sufficient.
And that's why if you look at like C1, for example, I even went a step beyond that and said, you know, this map, this table, or this table, because it's in all three of those places, so that there could be no confusion to what we're talking about.
Sure, I had one more. This was on
Sure.
1732, page 2. It's just a bulleting thing. They had sport fields and courts as number 11,
Oh.
and then it went to 11 again. So
Good catch.
They just carried
So the numbering's wrong there, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
just on those last 4. That's all I had, Chair.
Thank you.
Oh, good catch.
Any other?
Yeah, I had a couple questions.
Sure. Go ahead, Darren.
1786-10, would commercial developments with residential housing or any housing in there fall into the multi-family developments category? Or are they not required?
That's how I've interpreted it in the past, correct?
Okay,
But yeah, it's a good point. If we're trying to make it as clear and objective as possible, there might be a need to add, you know, a number 5 or, you know, a 4 and move 4 down to 5 and say multifamily development that is part of a commercial or industrial development.
Okay.
That's a good point.
and second question, if a plot of land is not fully planned for development, if they're choosing to save a piece of it for later, how does the parkland dedication work with that as far as consecutiveness? If they decide to then put a bunch of zone multifamily and they only do part of it, I could see a situation where the parkland dedication is smaller than it really should be for the overall piece of land in order to kind of make a situation where it fits their need a little bit better. Because one side is maybe more desirable or easier to work with than the other.
So are you saying if, let's just say they have like I might draw on the board, actually, I think that might help illustrate it. So if we have we actually have one of these potentially happening in the near future, so this is a good thing to bring up. So if this is 10 acres,
Sure.
are you saying if they just develop, let's just say half of it,
Yeah, they want to do the top half right away.
and then they dedicate, let's just say parkland here.
Yep.
So this is
Based
a
on the
parkland.
5 acres.
Yeah.
Based on the 5 acres.
And then, once they finish that, even though it wasn't officially done as a phase development, now they're like, okay, now we're ready to do this.
Now we want to develop this.
And now they're gonna do another small park versus we wanted really, and maybe even in the Parks and Trails master plan, it kind of would have been better if we could have done it all at once.
Yeah.
Sort of like that Deer Point.
Yeah, I think there's a section that addresses that. Let me
We
see
Put it
here.
on the side and then
Mhm.
we expected the next one to be next to it.
This
Yeah.
is actually something that Counselor Walker raised, and this was one of the things that made us go back to the drawing board a little bit. It was this very thing you're talking about.
Yeah, I saw
actually.
the like continuous pieces, but it kind of didn't, and it mentioned that with the phases, but if they didn't have a second phase planned, they didn't really say that they had to account for it, that I could tell at least.
What if that bottom 5 acres gets sold to another?
Right. And I was
Entity.
concerned about that too, because, yeah, what if it didn't get done for 10 years and you've got the top half developed without adequate park?
Yeah,
Okay,
The
so
top half would be adequate for the 5 acres.
Right, but in the master plan where it was talking about not wanting to have a bunch of little parks,
Mhm.
we want to have bigger parks, right? It's less expensive to maintain.
So 1786-10C at the bottom of page 2 of 7 is, I think, our attempt to solve that riddle. So it's talking about notwithstanding section A above, when the amount of land to be dedicated is less than 1/4 acre, or the level of service standard for many parks in the master plan has been met for the site, the applicant shall pay a fee in lieu, except with the following exceptions. One of them is if it's a trail to be identified within the master plan. The other one's when the land to be dedicated abuts existing or planned parkland that necessitates additional acreage. So I think the attempt, and Spencer, this was one of the hardest things to come up with code language for, I believe, Spencer, if you remember that. But so I think in this instance, if this is like the first phase, and say the park's master plan shows, it doesn't show exactly where you develop it.
Mhm.
right,
Say it shows like a park in this area
right.
on the master plan, then I think our attempt would be, 5 acres, they're not gonna dedicate an acre, they're gonna dedicate a portion of, less than that based on, so if we could get dedication here. And so when this property develops in the future, we get some from this as well. And then the same thing over here. And because of that, we would start to kind of acquire different pieces of property to make up for that entire part.
Yeah, what gave me kind of is I was watching the council meeting from this week, and it's the Deer Point there, and there's that piece that's kind of undeveloped, right? The commercial that they have there, and if they put residential there, basically it could go towards the other half of that Deer Point Park, which is potentially what they're required to dedicate right now is much smaller. So kind of preventing that versus now if they were to develop that, and that if that were to get approved, when they go to do that other undeveloped piece, you'd kind of have to throw something down in that piece.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Spencer's gonna speak here in a second, but most cities so a lot of cities, if this was in here, they would go through like a land bank system and buy some land in this
Mhm.
area so that this very scenario doesn't occur.
Gotcha, okay.
But absent of us doing that, Spencer, do you want to speak?
Well, I was just gonna say, the way that the whole scheme is set up is it's supposed to try to incentivize them to work with the city to give some parkland that's workable for future growth and planning. And one of the tools in the toolbox to do that is to price the fee for the fee in lieu appropriately, so that if somebody holds some land, they say, that's going to hurt just to pay the fee. But if we work with the city, and they said they'd be willing to work with us if we are able to locate the park space appropriately for their future needs, then you've kind of used a carrot/stick approach to get them to come to the table and work with staff on citing which property gets cited, if it's less than the full amount, like what we're talking about in this hypothetical.
The other problem that is challenging or presents kind of a hurdle for the city to overcome is, in a lot of developments in Sandy, at least, we're not seeing like the scouters mountain developments like in Happy Valley where they get 500 houses at once.
Right.
So part of the that actually creates kind of a hurdle for staff, at least. We get a lot of 30 and 45, 50 lot subdivisions. The Shaley Meadows one was actually, that 100 lot subdivision was the biggest subdivision ever proposed in Sandy in one phase.
Wow.
So, and Happy Valley is getting them in the 400 to 500. But the problem or the hurdle is that we can't require like 2 or 3 acres of dedication.
Right.
So we're getting like kind of piecemeal dedication. That would be the one benefit of having a real big development, is you could say, based on the size of this development, you have to dedicate, 4 or 5 acres of land. And then that gets around, the concern you raised with having a bunch of mini parks everywhere.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's benefits of not having 400 to 500 lot subdivisions, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying one of the consequences of it is we get kind of issues like this happening quite often.
Mhm. Thank you.
So that's the code. It's how it's written is our best attempt to try to solve this riddle, but until we see it in action, we can't
Right.
make any promises on it. This was actually, I will admit, probably the most challenging thing with all the code edits. It was Counselor Walker raised this, and then I think somebody else during the process also raised it at the same time pretty much. And it was like, whoa, okay, yeah. How do you make sure that that occurs?
Other additional comments, questions?
I was gonna just let you know. So based on the revised formula, about a 45 lot subdivision is what we typically see in my tenure here. So if you took 45 times the calculation factor of 3 times 0.0068, they have to dedicate a little under an acre of parkland.
A little under.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So if you had 150 to 200 housing units or single family homes, then you could get into the 3 acre dedication area.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
With our old calculation, 5 times 3 times
half an acre.
0.58. Yeah. So it's even more of an issue of
Right.
these medium-sized subdivisions only dedicating a half an acre at a time.
Right.
So I mean, we're moving in the right direction as far as like getting larger chunks of land dedicated on these subdivisions.
I was just in Bend yesterday at one of their parks. And my wife commented, they really, Bend has got nice
Mhm.
parks. And we're in this Shevlin Park or something like that. Lots of woods and so forth. My observation, yeah, but somebody had to give this. It's a huge chunk of land and we don't have those happening.
I just did like a quick calculation. If we had to see at the highest possible density that we allow in residential areas, which is high density residential, which allows up to 20 units per acre. And one of the key recommendations in the plan is to build a community park, which at the smallest is 10 acres, ideally closer to 30 acres, but assuming 10 acres, assuming 3 people per unit, and the new factor, we would need relying solely on private development and dedication of parkland, we would need 24.5 acres of the highest density allowable
And
in
that,
Sandy to dedicate 10 acres.
and that's at the 3 persons per unit.
Yeah, that's 3
So
people per
our
unit.
code's actually 2 people per unit for multifamily. So it would even be worse than
Oh,
that.
2 people. I can figure that out.
It would, I mean, the factor would even be worse.
Yeah. So that's 40 people per acre. 40 people in 1 acre of land. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other one.
With a bark on top.
With the bark.
Green roof.
Yeah. So it's that's that's the hurdle if you don't have a land bank system to buy land.
Mhm. That we'll never get those 30, 40 acre parks.
It would be I think it would be very challenging.
Assuming 2 people were per unit, that's 36.8 acres
Of R3 land.
of our 3 land.
Yeah.
If we're
All built to
only
the highest
relying
density.
on private dedication of parkland to get a community park.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, as you can kind of see from the numbers, there's a lot of, you would need a lot of people and a lot of units therefore to acquire a big chunk of property without a land bank system.
Mhm.
I do know from speaking with Don Robertson, the Parks and Trails Advisory Board Chair, and I think he's been the Parks Director of like Milwaukee, Ashland, Metro, Gresham, like a lot of big cities. He said that typically, as a city gets larger and larger, that's when they start creating a land bank system and then going through purchase that way. So I think at some point Sandy will have to at least kind of look at that as an option.
Very interesting. Okay, if we don't have any further comments, I believe that we would just pass it on. I haven't heard any objections. Pass it on to city council,
So I had 2 corrections.
numbering.
The numbering as noted by Commissioner Mayton, and then adding, which I don't think it was a suggestion to add it, but it was clarity on the multi-commercial and industrial. And I think unless Spencer feels differently, I think it doesn't hurt to add it.
I think if the planning commission's inclined to recommend that add, I think we go ahead and add it.
I think it adds clarity to it, so.
I agree.
I have one other question before we finish up on this. On page 36 of the plan under 4.4, planning operations and maintenance needs. For the park, I'm on the parks master plan. I'm not on the. This kind of, I know I talk a lot about staffing, but it talked specifically about how low Sandy's staffing is for the parks, for planning operations and maintenance. And I just wondered, along with whatever else we send to the city council, can the planning commission, is there a way to recommend or support more staffing being looked at? Because I'm assuming that happens at the city council level.
What I'd say is to keep that separate from part of the legislative amendment process of this, but certainly I think the planning commission could pass on that recommendation or request to the city council separately.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm just noticing we're doing all this work, and then if the city doesn't have the staff to make it happen.
I mean, I think when we open the hearing, or after we go through the hearing on the next agenda item that
Okay.
Shelley's presenting, if you want to kind of readdress it then, and then Rochelle's on the line too, so she could potentially kind of answer that if she has an answer for the question, I guess.
Thanks.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to recommend a motion of approval to pass this to the city council for file report number 21-032, DCA Chapter 1732 and 1786.
The corrections.
With the corrections as noted by staff.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to forward to city council with our recommendation that they approve it, file 21-032. Roll call.
Commissioner Wagoner,
Yes.
Commissioner Poulin,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean Wenzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Hook,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton,
Yes.
and Chair Crosby.
Yes. Motion is approved. We will keep moving unless somebody feels they want a break. All right, we're on a roll. Okay, our next public hearing, this is new business. This is the Parks Master Plan. So at 7:22, we will open the public hearing for file number 22-011, the Parks and Trails Master Plan amendments. I'll ask for any abstentions from any of the planning commissioners. Nothing seen. Any conflicts of interest or conflict of interest to declare? We all like parks. And we'll move right to the staff report.
Great. So this is the actual amendments to the document itself that accompany the code changes. So we process this as a type 4 comprehensive plan amendment, which is why we are bringing it to Planning Commission for you to make your recommendation to the City Council. This amends the document, the Parks and Trails Master Plan that was adopted by City Council last year in September. A very brief overview of what the plan covers. The previous Parks and Trails Master Plan was adopted and published in 1997. This plan has a 15-year planning horizon. It does a couple of things. One, it reflects the current conditions of our parks and trails facilities. It recommends locations and types of new parks and trails facilities based on level of service analysis. And it recommends updates to existing parks and trails. And then finally, it recommends some funding strategies to implement the plan priorities and recommendations. So the amendments that were made to the document itself fall in one of 3 categories. One is one reason why it was updated was to align this plan with the transportation system plan update. So as we were updating the transportation system plan and going through that projects list, we just wanted to make sure that the Parks and Trails Master Plan project list coordinated with the TSP to ensure that there wasn't any overlap. While we were making those amendments, well, I didn't do it. While the people who made the amendments to the plan were doing the level of service and the TSP related amendments. They went ahead and updated all of the demographic data with 2020 census information since that was readily available. And finally, one of the purposes of the amendments were to make sure that the level of service and needs analysis methodology aligned with the development code amendments that you just discussed. So that's that per person parkland dedication factor change. So because this is a type 4 application, a type 4 comprehensive plan amendment, there is a set of review criteria that need to be met. The first review criteria is that this is the best means of meeting an identified public need. This was already found to be satisfied with the adoption of the original Parks and Trails Master Plan last year. And these amendments align it with additional city plans and work off of more up-to-date data. So if the last one met an identifiable public need as determined by Planning Commission and Council, then the amended one does as well. The second review criterion is that it meets relevant statewide planning goals. So in the staff report and in the presentation, I only addressed 2 statewide planning goals that are relevant specifically to these amendments. There were more goals that were met and addressed in the staff reports for the adoption last September. So if you're interested in going into those details, they're in the previous staff report. But for the amendments specifically, there was goal 1, which is citizen involvement. In addition to all of the engagement strategies that happened with the initial plan, this amendment process has its own requirements, including public hearings, which we are doing. And then the second relevant statewide planning goal is land use planning, which includes procedural requirements related to amending a comprehensive plan, which those procedural requirements are very clear and very defined, and those are being followed through this hearing process and the land use review process. Our recommendation is that Planning Commission forward their recommendation of approval to City Council to adopt the amended Parks and Trails Master Plan as a comprehensive plan amendment.
And it's just so you know, it's a little, the file number that we just looked at, that's actually, it's kind of a little bit odd, but that file number has never been closed. So I opened that in like summer of 2021. And so that's why I didn't go through a lot of the analysis that Shelley just went through, is because we already kind of looked at that back in September and October when you guys saw this last time. So this one's a new land use file though, to address this.
All right. We will quickly, I think, move on to public testimony. I don't see that much has changed on my screen. But again, if you are listening or watching in and you want to, and you're a member of the public, we'll take testimony at this time for all three categories: those who are in favor, those who are not in favor, and those who are just neutral but have maybe a question or a comment, a suggestion for us to consider. And if you're on Zoom, you hit the raised hand icon, and that will effectively raise your hand and tell us you want to speak. Kelly will recognize you. If you're on the telephone, it is *9. That will raise your hand, and Kelly will recognize you. So now is the time to do that. And we will wait a brief moment.
Yeah, you still don't have any attendees.
We're not popular.
Just wait till we get a big land use item on here.
Right, right. The time will come.
You have a subdivision here in, I think, a month or two. So I think June.
Thanks.
All right, well, you probably don't have anything to recap. We can go ahead and close the public hearing and start our discussion. So we'll take a motion for that.
I'll move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Darren, seconded by Chris, to close the public hearing at 7:30 PM. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I wouldn't expect any. All right, discussion. Again, yeoman's job at these edits and working through these massive documents. It's just,
Chair, I had one question that's really, it's my own ignorance. So somebody can help me with it. It's the PTSMP appendixes A1. Can somebody explain that to me? Because I read it and I'm either slow or.
I believe that refers to Appendix A, page 1.
Yeah, no, I have that appendix up, but I'm trying to understand what it means, because it's the capital improvement plan summary. And does that mean that's the expected cost for this next, I don't want to say biennium, but 15 years?
You know, page in the, oh, is it?
76, I
Okay,
think,
I just got it.
yeah.
on the PDF.
So that is, hold on, sorry. And
I'm just-
Rochelle might be able to answer this quicker than I can. It looks like she's ready.
Yeah, I can give it a shot and see if I, so if we're on Appendix 1, A1, Table A1, the capital improvement plan summary. Is that correct?
The improvement plan summary.
Yeah. Okay, so I believe the existing park improvements, if you scroll to the table A2, it will list all the existing park capital improvement plan, and it goes through the tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the tiers are the different years. And so it breaks it down into, you can see that number there is the 18 million. So we have existing parks that need further development. So for example, the Sandy Bluff Park is on that existing park improvement. And then that first table, A1, also coincides with table A3, which is the proposed park capital improvement. So that would be future parks. So for example, like a neighborhood park like Sunset Park would be a future or a proposed park capital improvement. So then those numbers are the whole capital improvement, including trail improvements in a snapshot using all of those different tables.
And are those, I guess, secondary to that, do those have a timeline bound to those project costs?
Yeah, so let's, if we go to table A2, for example, so just on the next page, tier 1 is any project we're going to try to tackle in the first 1 to 5 years. And then tier 2 is 6 to 10. And then tier 3 would be 11 to the duration of the parks master plan.
Thank you. That's where I was getting confused at. So
Yeah. Absolutely, you're welcome.
Your boys are going to be out of high school before the pump track comes, Kelly.
Yeah, it'll be for their kids.
They'll be monitors.
No, I think that, just so you know, as kind of an aside, that might happen on a different schedule based on the community campus improvements, but I think that's yet to be determined.
Mhm.
But I think the pump track was like a pretty high priority through the public engagement for the Parks and Trails master plan. Yeah, we go to the Hood River one right now.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a drive.
One outside of Redmond too.
Yeah, it's the same designer as the Hood River
Oh,
one.
really?
Yeah.
Other comments? Questions? It's hard to improve on such a pretty.
I know,
report, isn't
it's pretty amazing.
Let's go find some money.
it?
Yes, exactly.
That's why we.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the plan was very well done. It's like most things in the planning realm, it's very ambitious, but that's a great thing when you're doing a master plan and you're looking at park improvements that could happen in the future. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's gonna be great as this is rolled out and we start to see some of these improvements occur around town.
If your master plan was just status quo,
Exactly.
it wouldn't be attractive.
Mm-mm.
It's just neat reading all these things. And think, wow.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, not saying the 1997 plan was a bad plan, but if you look at that plan in comparison to this plan, this one just really elaborates on the needs and how we're going to accomplish those needs in such a more illustrative. And I just think plans in general become a lot more reader friendly for just the general person to pick up and look at.
Yeah.
Okay, well, not to belabor it.
you want a motion, Chair?
Well, if we're ready, I think our discussion is wrapping up. So yes,
Chair, I recommend we forward a recommendation of approval to City Council for adoption of the amended Parks and Trails Master Plan as suggested by the staff report.
And I second that.
right, it's been moved and seconded to forward with our approval and recommendation that they approve it to City Council, file number 22-011, Parks and Trails Master Plan Amendments. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Wagoner,
Yes.
Commissioner Poulin,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean Wenzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Hook,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton,
I'm very excited, yes.
and Chair Crosby.
Yes. Motion passes. It'll be the City Council.
I think it's going on the same night as the Parks Code changes. I think it's June 6th. It's the first
Okay.
Monday in June. I know that.
All right. Well, I learned something in our last meeting when Hollis was chairing. And I think you will all be happy to hear this. We don't need a motion to adjourn. The chairman can declare it when when we've run out of agenda,
You just say it's over?
you say it's over. And we've run out of agenda. You had opportunity to make comments early on in our discussion time. So with that said, we will adjourn our meeting at 7:37 PM.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye.